people think they want to hear people talk about. Public information is not just about, every time responding to any and every criticism about the government or about issues about in our society. We have to allow the discourse at different levels to germinate, so that through it all we find the common answers to what people think about what we're doing as public servants, rather than trying to, every time they say something that we don't like, we come back and mock at them, or say something in defense. It's about listening and preparing yourself to adequately respond and all do the things that they are requiring you to do.
Great. So, with all of what's happening in the country, with all of the good things that are happening, I'm sure that there are concerns already about some of those things that are not good that are happening to the people. These are concerns about from His Excellency and the government of Liberia. Even though you don't come out to on the spot respond to some of those things, but you're concerned about them, right?
Well, definitely. One of the things a responsible government does is not to always come in the public to run the government, so to speak, in public. When concerns have been, spewed out from the public concerning a particular issue, the government takes note of it, cognizance of it, and act in ways that perhaps the public wouldn't understand, wouldn't hear what we're doing, but they see the actions of the government. The president is a talk and do president. He's mainly a proactive man, a man who's pragmatic. He likes to get things going. So he doesn't sit behind the desks every day, going through tons and tons of reports and papers. But he wants to see the practical movement of things. So he goes out in the field. Sometimes people don't even know that the president is out, but he does go out, to see for himself what's going on in the various communities, and come back and call the relevant public officials responsible to take action. So when he doesn't talk, or the government doesn't make a quote unquote big public pronouncement about things, does not necessarily mean that we're not listening to what people are saying and we're not taking due actions. Actions are being taken from time to time to address issues with respect to people's concerns. Take, for example, the Omega market, and let me jump into the essence of our discussion this morning. Having moved, first, it was concerning to the president that the red light had become, just ungovernable, so to speak, for any city regulation. People were doing any and everything down there. The garbage had taken over half of the facilities that the marketers had there. And so while the president was in France, it was brought to his attention. And then he issued an ultimatum to those responsible that by the time he returned to Monrovia about a Saturday, that the garbage that was there should have been removed, or else, regardless of who was responsible,
For
they would,
taking it from
they would feel the brunt of his action. And the people were mobilized. The both resources were brought from both the city government of Monrovia and that of the city government of Painesville to make sure that that place was clear up and cleaned. So the president came and inspected facilities and then said, "Look, I think it's about time now we give the marketers a new venue to apply their trade and allow for the free passage of traffic through the red light, because the government has spent a lot of money building the road coming from the Coca-Cola factory all the way down to the red light to ELW Junction, which is continuing. So the president felt it was important for that passage to be clear up. So the people were relocated to a MICAT facility where the Japanese government, in collaboration with the government of Liberia, built that monstrosity of a market facility that has almost everything to accommodate marketers. So, but unfortunately, it was underestimated that the amount of persons selling at the red light were more than what we could imagine.
Is that the situation?
Yeah, I mean, there are more people. By the time the real, quote unquote, the real registered members of the marketing association move the marketers to the structure and the facilities there at Omega, they found out that there were other people who weren't paying no dues, but they're at the red line.
The street
The
peddlers, you
street
mean?
peddlers and hawkers.
Okay.
They didn't have no facility also. And those are the people that were still trying to find a way lurking at the red line. So the president said, look, let's accommodate everybody. So he had gone there to see at first hand some of the drawbacks of the facility at Omega, and has instructed now Lace to build some new mini market stalls and market facilities to accommodate the hawkers so that everybody can be concentrated in that vicinity and rather than people coming back to
red
red
light.
light.
Okay, so mini markets are being built by List. Do we know how long it's going to take
Well,
before they're completed?
that's not usually I mean, yesterday, during yesterday's discussion, they didn't pull a time frame. I was trying to get in touch with the Liz MD to find out the time frame that it will take them to have
complete that.
to complete the mini markets. But it is being done to address the situation.
So what before and until that happens, what is going to happen with those street peddlers? Because this Omega market thing seems to be very close to the heart of the president.
Oh, very well. So what's happening now is that they've been asked to occupy some of the land space at Omega Market
Okay.
with their makeshift structures. The government is also going to make an opportunity to build sheds for these people so they don't sit in the rain and under the hot sun to sell their wares. So
Are they is the response from these people, is it encouraging to the president? Because every time he's in Ominga, making sure that those marketers have somewhere to do their business, and when we hear, sometimes we go to the red light, and on Sundays specifically, that whole place is still crowded with a lot of people, even though we see that the president is always there making sure that they get what they need. So
human tendency, change and reform do take time. Human tendency is that we, at an initial stage, when changes are occurring, we find a way to resist or not to embed ourselves in the reform. But I do believe that all of the actions that I envisage by the president and it's now being implemented through lays will yield some fruitful results. Say, for example, the president was making mention yesterday of how appreciative just the guys who used to do the money changing at the red light. When when he often goes to the Omega market, he stops right at the junction where the guy does the money changing to speak with them. He said one of the guys came to him the other day and said, Mr. President, thank you very much for everything. He said he was amazed that the guy was saying thank you. He said, for what? He said, look, first thing first, let me say to you, I'm a student at the University of Liberia. I was paying almost close to 700 United States dollars in tuition and other fees to attend the university. Now with the policy of non-tuition, tuition free, I'm not paying that money any longer, and I'm still doing my business here at the red light.
Wow.
He said, we would like to appeal to you, Mr. President, that given the fact that the market there does not have a place to accommodate us, because at red light we had our little boots along the way to do our business, but here there's nothing for us. So can you think about asking your people to build something for us? Touched by that, the president said, okay, look, I mean, it's understandable that you're coming, being very respectful and appreciative of what we're doing as a government, and so we will immediately ask Liz to build you all a facility where all of you can conglomerate together and do the money and changing business that you all do. So things are gradually grinding together. The more and more there's a need for the accommodation of more of such kinds of marketers and of business people. I'm sure the president, through lays and the government, will find means by which to accommodate everybody.
What is the vision? How do we? What does the government want to see? How does the government want red light to look?
Well,
after everyone has gone to Ominga.
And that's an excellent question. The president was saying yesterday, look, For him, he thinks that red light should be a place where people can, on a Sunday, take their family and stroll around. Because they're going to build an overpass there, and
Oh wow.
and and a and a and and a walk through sidewalk and all this sort of things, so people can go up there, stroll with their family and friends and loved ones, and see the beauty of Painesville City, and see car passing and all that sort of thing, because the overhead will be for pedestrians, so that they don't cross the road, because that will be a major thoroughfare when the road is completed. Vehicle moving faster going through the Monrovia Kakata Highway will not be slowing down. So in order for pedestrians to pass, it will be easier for them to go over the overpass, the pedestrian overpass. So all of these things are in the works. They do take time, but that's the grandeur vision of making that red light district something to marvel about when all is said and done about it.
Is the road, project still ongoing with the removal of these people, or it has stopped until you get everyone out of red light?
Chidi, the major menaces of the government Liberia road building project is the rains. We have, if a government has 6 months, 6 years in power, it actually really has 3 years to do all this road building, because every 6 months during a calendar year we have rains, and we don't build during the rains because our rains are difficult. They're torrential rain, so it's difficult to build. So right now, at the moment, we're in the thick of the rainy season, so all of the road works have come to a grinding halt, until such time, maybe in October, when the rains shall have subsided, then we'll see that the road works will begin again. But that project is well underway. I'm sure the Public Works Minister was here several weeks ago and talked about it.
Okay.
You can see that the road is coming. The 4 lanes are coming, the sidewalks on both sides of the road. I think there will be a medium in the middle where you have the lights. So by the time all of these things are completed, we'll probably have a modern city, Painesville and Monrovia, so to speak.
Okay, so there were a series of issues discussed at the emergency meeting the president had yesterday. One of those on his agenda was the Nico Ivanka shipwreck.
Yeah, I mean, I would, let me preface my comments by saying I was away from the country, and for a while I just returned home a week ago, and I was away in the States, and I heard of the boat wreck, the vessel wreck, and I said, wow, that's so disastrous. People who knew I was in the States, Liberians started calling me to find out what had happened, and I said I didn't have much information from home, and then I started to make calls back and forth into Monrovia to find out exactly what the situation was. So yesterday I had, really the first opportunity at first hand, listening to the investigators present an update to the president and the cabinet, and a fuller understanding of what occurred. It's so sad that our compatriots had to, go the way they went. Let me use this time individually and collectively. I know the governor has done so to express our heartfelt condolences to the family of the bereaved, because obviously no matter how much investigation is done, whether people are made answerable for their actions or inactions, the the loss of the loved ones cannot be returned. It's not going to They're not going to come back. So we truly gutted by that. We know that these things do hurt, and the president said yesterday, look, it is so sad that these things had to happen. Listening to the WIC, boss of WIC, tell the story as what had happened and all the efforts they had made to get the exams to the Southeast. It was so tragic a story to hear. It was a last minute, last ditch effort that they had to take to put these people on that boat, on
Did
that
they
vessel.
have to, be pushed to do that?
Look, a lot of things
the
happen.
last
They
minute?
they they they're exhausted all means. They had gone to Golden Beryllium, we let them down at the last minute. They also went to the 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 Samaritan Purse and another company that do flights to the southeast. They too let them down. So they went all around. They had contacted transport companies here to help them. The transport company said most of their vehicles were out. They did rent some,
Maybe they
but
were
then they
just,
didn't
maybe
have.
they
They
did it
didn't.
last minute to time also.
They didn't have the other. So it was just a tragic story. It's a tragic story, let me say, because when you listen to all the narration, and at the end of the day, they had to settle down for that to the use of the sea to transport the materials and the personnel, and then this happened. That was tragic. That was tragic, and that is why the government now, is making moves to identify with the bereaved and the victims of the family. $100,000 is being announced by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning through the intervention of the president, directive of the president, to reach out to these the victims of the family for burial and other family expenses.
How many persons do we know?
We're talking about two. The recovery now. We're talking of almost 6 bodies have been recovered so far, but you never know how many persons will be recovered. Unofficially, there are more than 20, anywhere between 26 to 28 persons on that vessel.
And how many persons survived?
Only 12. So we're still looking for, the rest of the bodies. And so it's so sad
Oh,
that
Lord.
was a non-passenger vessel. How did people get on the vessel? The investigation is ongoing.
When is it going to be concluded?
I mean, the investigators have said to the president that they might, by the end of this week, present their report to the Minister of Justice, who was the head of the National Security of Liberia, to review and then for ongoing submission to the president. So we're hoping that that can be concluded this week.
When it's what did the president say concerning that investigation?
Well, this investigation is ongoing, so the president didn't have much to say. He was just concerned that, that the white people didn't exhaust the government's, mechanism. What do I mean by that? The justice minister had said, because when the white, boss made his presentation of narration of what had happened from their side and all the efforts they made to get the exams to the southeast, the justice minister said, had they perhaps come to the Ministry of Justice, they would have, on the basis of national emergency, impressed upon some of these companies, for example, maybe Golden Beryllium, or even the people who run the airline, to ensure that the exams, get the people over there. But they didn't exhaust that. All of this is now hindsight. You understand what I'm saying? Hindsight.
Yeah, it's not going to bring back those who have lost
The president
their
also
lives.
was concerned that, look, if these exams were national exams, which meaning Liberia exams, not WIAC exams, so to speak, why then didn't we even think about, postponing the exams rather than putting people on the boat? But again,
Because in all fairness,
again,
the exams were postponed, and the students have not even taken it
yeah.
as a result of what happened.
I mean, it was the same. It's the same. You were speaking as though you were at the meeting when the president was speaking, because that's the same question he asked. Today, we have the tragedy. The exams haven't gone on yet, and here we are. We lost our compatriots. So I mean, all of this is just hindsight and trying to think ahead, so that next time we don't have these kinds of occurrences. But when disasters are ready to take place, sometimes it's just unavoidable. I mean, and humanly speaking, the white people thought to do their best to get the exams to the southeast, to have it done in line with their own schedule, but that
Too
didn't
bad.
happen. Too bad. Things didn't go the way they expected it to have gone.
So it's the family, the families have accepted, right? And they're moving on
Yeah,
with barrier.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can't speak here for the family, because that was not discussed. in length as to what the families. I know um, um, what the president did say was that he will find time to meet with the bereaved families of those who lost their lives at the on the vessel. Um, uh, he, he will
I'm
also
sure
reach out to them.
they're excited that at least the president will, make that part of his agenda because they too are, Liberians, and he will find time to kind of talk about it and make it his duty to make them happy in some way.
Sure,
Yeah.
I mean definitely.
So another thing that was
Before we leave the
the
vessel issue, what are the preventive measures outcome?
okay.
Because again, one of the things that was concerning the general reason why the president had what we call the emergency national emergency coordination meeting yesterday was to sort of derive mechanisms through which now we can think about preventing these kinds of things from happening. Human beings as we are, we can predict the future, but we can try as best as possible to set guidelines and principles and procedures, let me say, that will guide against some of these kinds of issues. So the president was saying, look, uh, why would we have a vessel in the first place that didn't have all of the safety, international safety gears that would ensure that when something happens, an accident is about to occur, people are secured. Say for
Maybe
example,
because it wasn't a
sufficient
passenger
sufficient
vessel.
life, but it was reportedly carrying passengers every now and then.
Doing that without, life jackets.
Who we are, how we are, and it's just unique to Liberia. It's just this African mentality and African thing. We risk everything. So one of the things the president mandated yesterday that going forward, the Port Authority, the Maritime Authority, all of them must ensure that all vessels, leaving the port and plying in the waters of Liberia, must have at least insufficient life jackets and other maritime safety gadgets and equipment to ensure that these kinds of disasters don't occur. Because if they don't, then we run the risk of having the kind of disaster that we had.
But
Some of the
Mr.
people who
Rennie,
survived were simply survived because their bags were floating, so they hung on their bags to survive. Because there were fewer,
so
there
is
were
it
fewer, there were fewer life jackets. Most of the people who survived had life jackets, and had other people had the life jackets on, they would have survived. So one of the ladies I heard from yesterday's briefing, one of the lady who survived because her bag was floating, and so she just managed to hang on to her bag. What a miracle, working God
real
he is,
miracle?
and that's how she survived. So imagine if we had sufficient life jackets on the vessel. All of the people would have survived, if not all, most of majority of them. But that
So how
wasn't the
true is it
case.
we've heard that this vessel is a Liberian-made vessel?
Definitely, so it was Liberian. It was made Dame Marshall. I understand it was built by a Chinese Dame Marshall, and it was certified under the reign of Commissioner Cully, James Cully, when he was at the Liberian Maritime Authority. They were excited that this vessel, for the first time, such a vessel was built, and so in satisfying it, said, look, Maritime should work along with the owners of the vessel to ensure that it did meet all of the different international maritime safety standards, rather than discouraging a Liberian made thing. So let's work with them to ensure that they improve upon it. From the perspective of the Maritime Authority, they did work for some time with the owners of the vessel. But then when they found out that the owners were reluctant to make additional improvements, that's when they decided on April 28th of this year to grind the vessel, to stop the vessel from further sailing.
So do
So
we
what
have?
happened on 17 July, between the period 28 May, 28 April, when the vessel was grounded at the Freeport, to July 17, the investigation will reveal that
Is this the
stuff.
first time such a thing has happened in the country?
No, we've had a boat wreck. We had boat wreck disasters before. I remember one of that several years ago. The same kind of thing. People going down to Harper and got drowned. These boats do
No, what I'm
work.
asking is where you have, a boat grounded and then they just, without any authorities, sail to another part of the country.
I mean, yesterday briefing didn't talk about that,
Okay.
but it would seem to me negligence has been established somewhere. I don't want to
To go into the
reveal
investigation. But
investigate
what I want to ask also
what was
again is, do
revealed
we have
yesterday
other
because it's
boats?
still ongoing.
Do we have other boats,
There are other boats, and the Maritime Authority revealed yesterday that they've granted, I think, 3 of them already from sailing because they too have not met the
the
standards.
standards? And this too is now posing problem to the people there in the southeast. Yesterday, our correspondent reported that there was another fishing boat from the port of Buchanan to Maryland, and the boat sank at the mouth of the
The Huffman River,
Yeah.
and the Atlantic.
Uh-huh. So
You
what
know,
are the measures to do, kinos, because he said kino, yeah, a kino.
yeah, it's a canoe.
Do they have the right to sail that,
I don't
far
know.
distance?
I don't know. Yeah, canoes go down the coast. From time to time. Some of them on a bit for fishing purposes.
But
Some of
that
them are
one was
used.
carrying.
Some of them are used. The very boats that are used for fishing sometimes can be used to ferry goods, because that's the society in
It's
which
kind of risky now,
yeah,
because
they know the
although
risk. They know the risk. It's where we are, and if you want to do certain things, then you have to be careful how you do it. These boats are designed to carry certain number of weight. If it is overweighted, certainly it will sink. No doubt
so
about
they
it.
put a lot of people, the lives at risk, because
Yeah.
they don't even land at
Even
the port.
those themselves who are owners of the boat or carrying the boat themselves, are pilots of the boat, so to speak, are themselves at risk. But maybe because they know how to swim and
Then they
maneuver.
got life jackets, and the people
So-
who they put on
so
these boats don't have.
Unfortunately, I was listening to the story. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, up to now, we haven't heard of casualties.
Not
It's
yet.
just that the marketers who
Who
had
had
their
their
goods
goods
on
on it.
on the boat will suffer loss, because, and again, it's the pressure coming from the 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 lack of access to Monrovia during the rains, by land. The roads are deplorable coming from the southeast. The government is trying in its, all its might to get the road finally done because the road is now at River G. It's fixed between Harper all the way to River G. So that between River G and Grand G there is ongoing. We're talking now between the Zwedru to Tapita. How much, what the funding is available. I understand that some funding is available from international partners and the government to sort of begin some work on the road. But until that time, it's going to be these kinds of stories. People are going to have to bear the brunt of it. It's unfortunate because when goods are beginning to dry out in the southeast, then that's when people now go
Find
at
other
desperate
means,
lengths
to just
to
get.
try to get goods into those counties.
Okay, so waterside.
Waterside, yes, the fire disaster at Waterside also was discussed. It was concerning to the president, that, and one of the issues mainly was that how come these kinds of defective vehicles are carrying combustible materials, like fuel and gasoline, and are allowed to go at the terminal at the LPRC, get filled out, and move without any mechanism of determining whether these things are roadworthy, was the major concern of the president. How come don't they have a mechanism to determine? We heard from the fire chief, for example, who said, look, time immemorial, the fire service used to be the ones at the LPRC giving permit for and inspecting those vehicles before they are even let out of the facility.
Is that still happening?
That is not happening any longer. So now there is a need now to go back to search. Because if we just let any and every car, these
Then we'll
things will,
have these kind
yeah,
of,
these kinds of
disasters
disasters will happen.
But
You know,
why
even talking about container trucks coming out of the port
Freeport?
during, very busy, hours during the day, and these trucks are defective, trying to climb the Johnson Street Bridge, or even the Waterside Bridge and the Waterside Hill.
Macklin Street,
Street
especially during the festive
season and all that sort of thing. So the president
So
said,
whose
look,
duty is it? Only the fire truck or the fire people
that is
or
why
the police?
that is why the president said yesterday there has to be an interagency coordination to now design a program to see how we can guide against these things. Enforcement of the public safety laws, inspection of vehicles, making sure that even in facilities where you have hazardous materials, combustible and hazardous materials, you have to enforce and ensure a stronger and robust measure of public safety.
Who's going to take charge of that?
Those institutions, we're talking the public works, no, we're talking fire service, the police, Ministry of Justice, all these things, because you come from regulation to enforcement. And then even in these facilities themselves, like the RPRC, they have a strong, we heard from the managing director, Madam Yura, who talked about the strong regime, fire safety regime that they have there at the LPRC to prevent, these kinds of occurrences.
But they have it there, but what are they doing with those cars or those vehicles leaving their facilities to other facilities?
I don't believe mainly, regulating those defective cars are on the shoulders of the LPRC. I think it's mainly.
So they don't have a way of determining that, right?
The LPRC it's not a mechanic shop, so to speak. So it's not going to determine which vehicle is defective or non-defective. It is for the police to begin a rigorous road inspection, of vehicle inspection annually or regularly or routinely, whatever
Can they do that?
Before it used to happen before, and we did hear from the police again that authority on the president said his time was turned over to the Ministry of Transport. So the president said, look, if the police is the one that's supposed to do it, because in the last cabinet meeting, I understand that was discussed, I was away. The president said, look, the Ministry of Justice said, look, what we need to do now is to put up a plan together. The police need to come up with a plan, send it forward to the Minister of Justice for approval, for perusal and approval, and then we start to do the regular inspection again. Because if you don't do these kinds of periodic inspection for roadworthiness of these kinds of vehicles, this is what happens eventually. We spare the rod and we spoil the child. These disasters happen before we realize that we've been sleeping on our laurels. So the president said, look, let's let the kind of interagency coordination now come to fruition. Let's begin the rigorous enforcement of these kinds of regulations that we already have on the book. We're not lack of guidelines and regulations about these things. It's about just the enforcement and coordination among the governmental agencies.
Do we know how much damage was caused?
It didn't. But it didn't. I don't think dollars and cents have been put to the cost of the fire disaster at Water Street. But
what is going to happen to the victims?
The victims, people, the petty businesses that got destroyed as a result of the fire. The president has announced that he will lead a humanitarian effort to ensure that they reach out to these people affected as a result of the fire to have their businesses restored. So he personally will lead that effort. It says because these are ordinary people trying to make ends meet, make a living for themselves. So he will lead that effort. He's asking for humanitarian support towards that effort. He will use the influence of his office to get support for these people so that they
How
get.
many persons are we talking about?
No, they didn't quantify that.
Okay.
They didn't quantify that. So he will lead an effort. I'm sure as the effort progresses, the whole thing progresses. We will come to an understanding of how many persons were affected and what kind of businesses they were doing, and what the cost will be in terms of helping them to restore their businesses. Okay. With respect to the properties that were damaged, I think the owners of the truck and the contractors of that truck will be the ones who will who will be held, because there's no insurance, first thing, on the vehicle.
What?
There was no insurance, and this is one of the things. Every vehicle flying this country by law, by regulation, must be insured. So how come that vehicle didn't have insurance? So who bears the responsibility for the property that was damaged? All of these things, these are things that we have to now begin to pinch ourselves about and pull our straps our straps up.
Wow. So now the property damage is left with those who have the truck and should make sure that those properties are restored.
Oh, definitely.
And the president is concerned about those businesses who are affected,
especially
the
ordinary people
okay.
who businesses are there, who businesses were there, and doing their little thing and trying to make their ends meet. I know they got affected as a result of that defective vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah, some measures have to be put in place so that people don't ply the streets with these kind of vehicles and think that the government is going to shoulder the responsibility for their actions. Okay, the C.H. Rennie Hospital.
The C.H. Rennie Hospital. That hospital, finding yesterday, the hospital, I understand, was built in 1974. So it's been quite a while. It's been quite a building that has survived quite a long while. If you talk about 1974,
when some of us were not even born
today,
oh my God,
we're talking almost 40 plus years ago. Yeah. But the report was that a day or two prior to the fire incident, they had been experiencing power fluctuation.
Okay.
From whether it was especially from the LEC, the grid that was on, and so they brought on somebody to help remedy the situation. The guy had done some work prior to the day of the fire, and had promised the following day to come and do the finish up on what he was supposed to have done. But apparently he didn't show up, and LEC came, switching between LEC and the generator. People began to notice smoke coming from in the operating room, and people who were responsible actually for the turnover of switching between power and that sort of thing were on duty. So the president
they were not on duty.
So the president who was there, apparently they didn't know what to do, and even the fire extinguisher that was there, the people didn't know. They said perhaps to say it was malfunctional, but it could be that they weren't even trained how to use it. So all of these things came out yesterday, and so eventually now we see the hospital got about fire. Major parts of the hospital burned. Taxpayers' money to waste. The structure's gone. The people of Margibi, especially Kakata City, deprived that major facility. It's an historical facility because it's been there for time immemorial. So the president said, look, rebuilding is not an option. It will be rebuilt by the government. The Minister of Health says, in the meantime, the Kakata Health Center, some local clinics, as well as the Bombay Hospital will be used to provide health facilities while the hospital is being rebuilt. But the point here is that how do we prevent these kinds of things from happening in public facilities? We should now begin to enforce fire safety regulation. The fire chief said to us yesterday that most of the time government entities are reluctant to cooperate with them when they come for fire safety inspections or talk about training people in these entities so that they are prepared in case of any eventuality to be able to tackle the fire. people are reluctant to do that. But I said, it shouldn't be. If there's a regulation, then people should not have a choice about whether they want it or not. You know, if it's an issue of resource, then we need to find money to get these entities to pay, or get the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning to put some money into the fire service budget to ensure that these routine inspections are done. The public facilities have all of their various firefighting gear in place, so that we can have these kinds of disasters. So yeah, so that was.
Come to think of it, and I totally agree with the fire bus. It's something that we don't pay attention to at all.
No,
If
definitely.
if a fire service were to come here, even at LBS, and say, we have to do the fire drill and all of that in case of any eventuality, we will not pay much attention to that. But when something happens, then we're like, oh my God,
Yeah,
if we.
I remember during my time here at LBS several years back, they did come here and do some drills with Samuel Brown, and then we had fire extinguishers all through the building. It's quite an expensive venture, but it saves lives
And property.
and and it's not something that we should kick against. It's not something we should kick against. We should cooperate when the fire service people come to want to do their part of their job, their mandate as mandated by law, because these things are law, are legal, and also regulatory. So we must be willing in the public space, especially if you're in public service, to be able to follow the regulations. So the reinforcement will come about, through
Well,
interagency, a government interagency coordination. We're talking about the Ministry of Justice, the fire service themselves.
The police.
Not necessarily the police in
Justice
this
Ministry.
regard, but the Justice Ministry and the fire, because the Justice Ministry is the overall head of the Joint Security of Liberia, through which the fire service is an integral part.
Would it also affect homes? We're just getting unconfirmed reports about another fire in the Gardnersville area this morning again. So I don't know. Is it going to affect homes?
One of the things we also talk about, yes, also is to get people to begin to develop some sense of awareness that when fire occurs, the president was saying, look, I raised an issue about, fire service coming, having a radio program that will talk about how to prevent fire, while at the same time, training, using the airwaves to train people on what they can do. The president said, look, it's one thing to do, but there's another thing that Liberian people themselves don't even know what to do when fire happens. If fire comes on a building, you see people chunking rock, chunking plank,
Looking for water.
slipper, all kind of things. And some of these things are even helping the fire to even blaze more. If fire in the building, you chunk rock, what good is it to chunk rock to the place where the fire burning? So maybe these kinds of public education on the part of the fire service bureau might help in the prevention of fire. Why take a gallon of gas and keep it in the house?
I know. And that's what people do.
Why take a gallon of gas and keep it in the house? One of the stories we heard yesterday was that one of the guys working at the port of Monrovia, the new headquarters could have gotten burned.
Oh, no.
Man is responsible for fire safety. He's there. And so he say he relaxing, he started taking, he wanted one drag. He wanted smoke. And then when he finished, put it knocked down.
Yeah.
Right near the extinguisher thing, boop, it's got a fire. So if some people themselves who are even responsible can be negligible on duty. Rather, what opposed to us who are in the communities. One man, even the issue of selling gasoline on the sidewalk in the communities, exposed, to the public. Anything can happen. Somebody smoking, passing, subconsciously doesn't even realize that there's a container, a container of gasoline, get through the cigarette there, and gas by the time, boop, it's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
So all these things, we have to find a way, an interagency approach to dealing with, who's selling to the to the street hawkers for gasoline. Who's selling this kind of hazardous material to them? Is it the major importers or the retailers themselves, the gas stations, or what? How can we prevent them from doing so? All these kinds of things now have come to focus because we have these disasters, especially the fire disaster, on our hands.
And what to think, talk about is even these illegal connections also with these shocks all around. With
Even the
LEC,
LEC was brought into focus. The high voltage that comes into people's homes, the kind of electrical wires we're using, public buildings. Some of these buildings have been there for time immemorial. Like the Ministry of Information, I've been that building been there since the '60s, the early '60s, and it hasn't gone through any major renovation. Imagine if the unforeseeable comes about. I mean, can't say so. God forbid, it shouldn't happen. But these are some of the things we're talking about. How do we, now begin to ensure that even if you're building a home, you're using the right kind of wiring. LEC needs to come. The fire service people,
we don't pay attention to these things. But when
you can put in a 250 kVA generator and put in certain kind of wire to receive the current, the voltage coming from there. It can cause electrical shock. It's like putting a container on a car.
And people still do that. They put gasoline in the gallon, put it in the car, and they have people in the car. But again, it is what it is. Minister Rennie is my guest this morning on the Super Morning Show, talking about all of the discussions held at this special emergency meeting convened by the president.
One of the things
yesterday.
I didn't talk about, in talking about the CH Rennie thing, it was brought to the attention of the president that during the fire, people started to go into the building under the guise of trying to save the equipment. But when they brought the equipment outside, they took it to their communities, to their homes. That is unfair. That is simply unfair. Because that's one disaster taking place right there. If you're saving the equipment, good enough. Your good Samaritan will love the effort. But if you go there to loot, you're even hurting the community even more. What would you do with the equipment?
Sell it.
Look, how much would you get from it?
Because you don't even know the worth of
it. The thing you're even taking out. So the president said, look, we cannot allow these kinds of things to fester. So he ordered the police yesterday to immediately move into the residence in Kakata for search and retrieval of all of the items that were taken and looted from the CH Rennie Hospital. When I left, as at the end of our cabinet yesterday, the meeting yesterday, I don't want to call it cabinet, the emergency disaster coordination meeting, the police director and the police inspector general had said he had already instructed his people to move into Kakata to begin that search and recovery effort. So I don't know how far it's going and what is yielding, but the president was concerned and he said to the IG, he said, I want to see results on this one. I'm testing you, I want to see results on this one because it's unfair. The very equipment could just be used in the local Kakata clinic.
It could be used on the person who's keeping it in their home and they get sick.
Yes, so it is for the county. Why you will loot computers and other things and carry it to your house?
You take hospital bed and carry it to your house.
Hospital bed and
then when you're sick, you don't even have beds
at the hospital. At the local clinic that's supposed to be helping you. So the president, wasn't happy about it. And he said, look, actions should be taken, and this search and recovery operations by the police should immediately go ahead.
Okay, Minister Rennie is our guest this morning on the Super Morning Show. We'll open up the lines now for you to ask him whatever question you think we didn't ask and you want to talk about this morning. Okay, let's talk to our very first caller this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. 30 seconds, please.
Good morning to the countryman in Liberia. My name is Abraham Political Modrisetu, and I call from the headquarters of the Veterans Bureau on the most talk about having the government's money. Let me appreciate the information minister for appearing on the bigger platform EFBC. I think the meeting held by the president was in good faith. We need to our awareness in showing that we can control the issue of fire disaster. I agree with the minister. You know, those of whom who took that material from the hospital, I think they need to bring back that material. It's not unacceptable. We need to protect our own. This is our own country.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's talk to this caller. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, man.
Morning, sir.
Yeah, this is Daniel Zinga. We are joining from SPD Bolivar.
Let's hear you.
All right, I just want to say thank you to this humanitarian president that God has blessed us with. But my question to the minister this morning is, Moreover is not like why must anything the government put in place at least to have one or two fire service or job to the rest of the counties? It is not in Moreover.
Okay, let's hear this other caller. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chico.
Morning, sir.
My name is Papa K. Colley, and I go from Lower Mankiwi County.
Let's hear you.
I want to say thanks to the Honorable Minister. My recommendation to the Minister, I want them at least every county should have at least 5 fire service.
Fire service or fire truck?
Fire service in your county.
Okay, let's hear you. Good morning.
My name is Ed.
Morning.
Okay, this is Richmond Kaya, calling from Central Moravia.
Okay.
Okay, I learned from the Amiada people, they claim responsibility for this. He said that I will call a water, and they are saying they are getting to the insurance company to show that things to work out for the people. I want to learn.
Okay, thank you so much for your information. Let's talk to this other caller. Okay, that person is off the line. Calls on 0778641-549, and you'll be live on the Super Morning Show. Our guest this morning is the Minister of Information. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. This is Phyllis.
Let's hear you, sir.
Yeah, the issue with Nigeria is that we are enemies of ourselves. Most of the time, I work for the Ministry of Public Works and specifically the zoning division. When we are ensuring that there are safety measures put in place, even at the level of the construction of this facility, is very people who should be supporting these processes are the ones that are very resistant. We had a situation where anything on the Ledgerhood Road where I managed to have gotten the fire truck. So I'm almost surprised. The people came, the very people who the truck came to help, they started to sue the people. The attitude and actions of our people are hampering everything, and it comes right back to our plate.
Yeah.
Like there is a common saying, you cannot throw a die in the sea because it comes back to your table. We are causing problems for this nation, and it is not about President William, it is not about who is the president. But we got to come together as a country and as a civilized people and put things in the right perspective to save lives and property.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Titi. How are you?
Morning.
This is Joe Thomas, and I'm calling from Tuporo Kingdom Care Community. I want to say good morning to the Honorable Minister Ledgerhood. Thanks so much for the update on the current progress of the road development from Maryland down to River G. We urge the EFBC and Ministry of Information to please try their best to continue to address us on the development of other national road projects, because it's very cardinal to us as citizens.
Okay.
And secondly, I would like to recommend to all line ministries that are involved in disaster management to have a set safety security protocol, a model for all travel apparatus, either aviation, either by sea, road, even residents.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Cover fire, electricity, flood, and even how we.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
Hi, the morning with your studio.
We're good.
Okay, that's good to see. This is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Amen.
For me, I always put one point. He said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, his righteousness, and all other things shall be added unto us. I would say sorry to William Liberia on the nowadays, he Rennie hospital in Calcutta. But what I have to say, on the line of these bidding, fire extinguisher, even though that particular work is expensive, I'm in it. I work in the fire service and now, and it's always good to do your bidding like that. And in all, electrifying the bidding, it has to be granted. The
Okay.
status of cables is important. And I overheard you talking about these bidding was electrified years back in the 60s, 50s. The wire is updated. No, those days wire cables is important for construction. Sometimes they write eat the installation from only. At times they should do I would say general master on the cables to check
Okay.
the cable and what have you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me take my final caller, and then I'll come back to the minister. Morning.
This is the voice of Johnny Bande from Congo Town, Salman Embassy.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Rennie, good morning.
Good morning.
In this kind of modern day and age, there are people, employees at the Ministry of Information who are making lessons from the security department. What do you say for that? Security department learning lessons on the para. What do you say for that?
Okay. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Ooh, let me take my very final caller, and then we call it a quit. Morning.
Yes, this is Onismos Gawe, and I join you from Buchanan City.
Okay.
Yeah, let me say thanks to the minister, especially on the point of the awareness he emphasized regarding the fire situation. But in addition to that awareness, I want to suggest for us to have a coordination with different institutions and that of individuals who are supplying electricity in the different cities on a private or commercial basis. Can we have the Buchanan, sorry to use Buchanan City Corporation, but that's the representation of all the other cities. Can we have the city corporation working along with the fire service in their respective counties,
Okay.
as well as the electrician of the county, for them to coordinate and regulate how running of wires can be done across the city and in different homes and at business centers. That will also help in addition to the education.
Okay. Thank you so much. So much suggestions coming from all over. Let me take BG Play Nyinsua, and then I'll come back to you, Minister Rennie. Good morning, Mr. Nyinsua.
Good morning, proud daughter of Sino. Good morning, how are you? Let me say good morning to the Motivational Director, Now Information Minister, Lenny.
Good morning.
This is BG Penyeswa. Let me say good morning to the people of Sino. Titi, the most thing that when I got that morning alone on common page and I saw what the incident took place Sunday early morning hour, and I heard that the president moved in the early morning hour he was in Jakarta. That was the biggest thing ever that I saw. So I was so happy indeed that because I know very well that this president is a humanitarian president, so he felt the burden on his heart. So let me say thanks to the president immediately, and thanks to all of the staffers that attended that disaster meeting of the government for their decision. So thanks to them, and I appreciate them a lot.
Okay, Mr. Nyinsua, thank you so much for being a part of the program, Mr. Rennie.
Sure, yeah. So let me say thanks to all those who called in and made their suggestions. I'm sure people are listening. All of us in government are listening, and we'll do what we can within our respective remits to ensure that we do the right things that would not, embarrass our country. Let me also say that on the issue of the mob violence and the stoning of vehicles, especially the fire truck. When we heard the news about that thing in Kakata, and even it was brought to our attention yesterday that the minister of health on a routine visit was also attacked. Why are we resorting to these kinds of imaginations? It beats our imagination that Liberians are going to such lengths. If we have any issue, there are always ways in which we can address those issues. If there's a disaster taking place in a community and people are trying to help, the government is trying to help, then you have some group of people there acting rude. It's just unfortunate. Firestone tried to intervene, and the truck was stoned. I understand that it was even
How then
damaged.
do they need help?
So what signal are you sending?
Yeah.
To the central government? So people have to rethink. Community leaders, our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters, we have to rethink ourselves, because it is only Liberians that can help Liberia. That thing that we think that we can destroy the country, and then people would, foreigners would take their hard-earned taxpayers' money to come and build Liberia. It's a facade. We have to rethink now because we see what is happening. It's difficult to rebuild. Since we destroyed the country, we have not even, repaired it into thirds of what we destroyed. We're still struggling as a country, reeling from the devastation of the war. And then the little that we have built upon, we're trying to destroy it again through mob violence. We have to stop. They definitely have to stop. And the president was dead serious about it. Even the issue of the protests from the university students, the president talked about it in passing yesterday and was saying, look, how is it disadvantageous to the students in this day and age for the digitization of learning, e-learning? How is e-learning a bad thing? How is it advantageous? If there are problems with the process, with the technology, it can be dealt with. But the result of violence that will destroy public and private property, that cannot be continued to condone. That we cannot continue to condone as a government. President made it clear. He gave clear instructions to the Minister of Justice and the police that going forward, such protestation and violence must not be allowed. The full weight of the law must be brought against people who he rendered them as terrorists. Because we cannot see the reasoning why people would destroy public and private property just because they have a disagreement or they have a simple issue that can be dealt with.
We have coronas. We have corona in the country, so you have to still learn. So do it online.
Okay, so if there was a problem, if there are problems, there are ways in which
you can talk about those problems.
The university authorities are willing to listen, but to engage in that kind of violence, that they destroy public and private property under the guise of protestation, that's just simply wrong.
Minister Rennie,
it's a right for people to protest, but it's a fundamental right guaranteed by the laws of our country, by the Constitution. But that same Constitution says it must be done peacefully. Peacefully is the operational word. Protest peacefully, not using violence to justify,
Mr. Rennie, what were these university students protesting about? What we heard is that, the e-learning process, because of the coronavirus, you guys have to do your lessons online. Is that
they said the cost of $5 was high.
$5 for what?
It's astronomical, according to them. But
okay,
so if it is high and the university is saying pay this fee, isn't there a way through which your grievances can be heard
because you have a leadership?
So that it can be reviewed? If the university leadership was adamant about the change in the costs associated with the e-learning and all the technical things glitches that were happening, there are other means. There's a board of trustees of the university. The president also is the visitor to the university. You have the ways in which there are a lot of channels through which their grievances could have been channeled. But to just begin this violence, this culture of violence has to stop.
And leaving the university, coming outside, destroying properties.
How justifies that? The people go to the Capitol building, locked up the gates from the national leaders. What I would like it or not, these are our national leaders. We elected these people. They are clothed with the authority to run the country. You go and lock the gate because you say you don't like the way the economy of the country is being governed. So you lock the gate on the people, and then you get the law, to take its course, and you say, well, if I will do it again, what kind of bold-faced challenge to the authorities is that? Under the guise that I have the right to protest. It comes a time that we have to now use the law to set examples on people who blatantly violate the law by acting rude under the guise of protestation. Because I believe it's just shared rudeness and violence, and that has to be, curtailed through the appropriate, penalties under the law. So I just wanted to make that point. But in terms of the mechanisms in place for more fire trucks, the president has mandated the Ministry of Finance to find money within the budget to get additional fire trucks, while at the same time is asking those public corporations with a little more in their budget for social corporate responsibilities to dig deep and now spend on many fire vans that can be used in the various communities and counties, so that by the time fire happens, these mini vans can go there to quell the fire. Because, for example, if we had something like that in Kakata, a mini fire van in Kakata, it would have been able to to quell the fire. Why a bigger response come from Monrovia?
I think the minivan is even important because most of our homes don't even have a
Yeah,
lot of roads.
So
Even the fire
so the
truck.
mini vans will be identified and purchased and distributed to the counties. It will amaze you to know that we have a total of 6 fire trucks, from the fire service, National Fire Service so
The
far.
whole country.
In the entire country. Only one
All
is
of them are in Monrovia?
5 in Monrovia, 1 in Buchanan.
Oh, the Buchanan people are
So we have to.
Wow.
So we have to now find a way. And the government president was very concerned. Said, "Look, we can't go this route. We have to find a way to buy these vans. They don't cost much. They're not the astronomical kind of sophisticated. Let me put it this way: the sophisticated kind of vans. But at least once provided, they have the capacity to fight fire. So the president is asking some of these major public corporations with a deep budget for social corporate responsibility to look into purchasing these vans that can be distributed to the counties to help them in times of need.
Okay. Minister Rennie, thank you so much for taking up your time to sit with us this morning on the Super Morning Show.
Thank you, TD, and thank you to all of our listeners across the country. The government library will continue to be engaged with the citizens. The president is very much concerned about, meeting with the development agenda of the country. We're focused on meeting our objectives as enshrined under the PAP, and we'll continue to do the things that are necessary for the growth and development of Liberia.
We're hopeful that later on, maybe in a month or in the coming weeks, we can talk to you about the president's travel across the country and what are some of those projects that are already kick-started already and the ones that are ongoing.
Sure, definitely we can plan that and do that.
Okay.
All the best.
All right. He's the Minister of Information, Cultural Affairs, and Tourism, Mr. Ledgerhood. Rennie, let's take this break and then we usher in our next guest on the Super Morning Show. Please stay with us.